Hello, everyone. My name is Alina von Davier, and I work with Duolingo as the Chief of Assessment. In my presentation today, I will talk about the artificial intelligence tools that we use in assessment. I'm going to share my screen now and share with you some of the work that my team and I do every day. So I'm going to put this under view and presentation and hope that we will get um, a full presentation and a full video. It's really my pleasure to be here with you and share some of my work. As I mentioned before, I want to acknowledge my team members that have worked on different parts of what I will be presenting today. I also want to share first with you the missions, both the mission for the Duolingo English test, but also the mission for the company at large, because I believe it's relevant that you know what are the criteria through which every judgment for the test or for other products is made. So we have a very strong social mission, and it's about making education universally available. And also for the assessment to use technology in a way in which can lower barriers and increase opportunities for English learning language learners everywhere. I want to emphasize that Duolingo English test is what we call a digital first assessment. What is a digital first assessment? It's one that is designed with computational models and AI algorithm in mind from the beginning. And it's also evidence-centered and language science-based. In this particular case, the Duolingo English test is aligned to the Common European Framework. It is also a valid and reliable test. It has integrated pieces that work together very smoothly. That's why I mentioned there the fluid infrastructure, and I will say more about that later. And we have integrative theoretical frameworks, such as the Computational Psychometrics, such as the Common European Framework. We also have integrated automatic tools that function well within these theoretical frameworks. What is also special about the digital first assessment in general, but especially for the Duolingo English test, is that they are test taker centered. The test in this case can be taken anytime, anywhere, on any device. It is administered online with remote proctoring that involves both the subject matter expert proctors and artificial intelligence tools. And it is extremely flexible with a very fast turnaround of scores, and it is affordable. What are the advantages of the Duolingo English test? Well, first, it's scalable. It uses automatic item generation to create huge item pools that in turn make sure that the test content is secure. It also uses online testing with remote proctoring, as I mentioned before, which leads to a really high security test, secure test administration. It does also use automatic scoring using artificial intelligence and humans for the design. Actually, humans for the design, artificial intelligence for the scoring, and then human for evaluation, which leads to a really fast score reporting. We are reporting the scores back in hours at the moment, which is probably the fastest turnaround for any high stakes test. It also employs automatic quality assurance tools, and we call ours Aqua. We just developed it. It's still an MVP, Analytics for Quality Assurance in Assessment. And it's a computer adaptive test. In being a computer adaptive test, that means it's efficient, so we can have shorter tests, and it's very accurate because it targets directly the ability of the person. So I also mentioned the integrative frameworks. Well, one of the integrative frameworks that we think about the test is the computational psychometric framework. I introduced this terminology a few years ago excuse me, to describe the blend of theory-driven psychometrics with machine learning methods that are used to measure latent abilities in real time. What that means is that we start with a cognitive science, learning sciences, psychometric models to design our work. And then we identify the higher level construct that become part of the psychometric model at the highest level. We also, but the other part, so that's going top down, but we also, when we collect the data, we include as much telemetry, fine-grained data as possible. And in that case, we need feature extraction tools. And this is where some of the data mining techniques come to place. And then we also need to connect these features that we extracted to the higher level constructs, and that's where the artificial intelligence tools come into place. So in summary, for the DT, we have a combination of subject matter experts with artificial intelligence to create an ecosystem for what we call a digital-first assessment. And the power is in taking advantage of what each of the two can bring to the table. So the humans bring the less routine elements to their work, to the work that we need, and the design and the evaluation, while the machine can scale. It helps us scale significantly and very fast. What you see here, we just look at roughly at the full test development, administration, and scoring process. And we have AI algorithm underneath each of these steps. And as you can see, we also have human experts in each of these steps, as well as theoretical frameworks there. So what is actually a Duolingo English test? It's a test, obviously, for English, and it is research-based. And you can see here the evidence. You can see here the information about different papers emphasizing the validity of the item formats that are on the test. It is evidence-centered, meaning that we nowadays spend quite a lot of time making sure that the type of evidence we collect from these item types is strictly aligned with the theoretical framework and with the claims that we want to make. And we have evidence that the test is valid and efficient, and it's also predictive for the goals that the test has. So just to give you an example on what type of items we have here, you see here a short writing session. You have here an example of the speaking part of the test. And you also have an example of one of the interesting item types that has been modified and perfected at Duolingo, which we call the C-test type of items. Now, the whole test has a foothold in what we call social cognitive framework, and this has been used to design the test initially. So I want also to give an example on how artificial intelligence is being combined with the human expertise to create these powerful tools. So I will start with how it works for traditional test development. So in a traditional test development, we start with expert written test items, and then we pilot them to ideally thousands of test takers. And then we do psychometric analysis. And once we do that, we put those item parameters in what we call a final pool of test items. But this part is not only, it's extremely time consuming because you need a significant amount of items in the item pool. So you need to repeat this piloting over and over to have sufficient item statistics for each item. And obviously the expert written test items is also an extremely expensive activity. So the question for us has been, what if we can replace that? So let me go back here. Sorry. So what we are trying to do is to replace this part, the piloting part, using artificial intelligence. So we have subject matter experts that do the design. We have open educational resources for the initial sources for our items. And then we use artificial intelligence to scale up. Once we've done that, then we have again subject matter experts coming back and evaluating the created items from what we call a FAB review, a fairness and bias review, which includes also cultural aspects, whether the test is culturally appropriate for all test takers. And with that, we can also handle from that point on, we can handle all the estimates in a similar way as in other assessments. So what you see here is how all of these pieces fit into a computational psychometric framework. We start with expert annotated text and word lists. So we have the text and word lists that are open educational resources, but then we have the annotation of this text to CEFR, which is Common European Framework. So it's an alignment. We also have statistical models for estimating the CEFR alignment for each of these items. As I said before, we have natural language sources that are being annotated. And then using these tools, all of these three so far, we generate the items automatically based on the input and the training data that has been annotated and reviewed by experts. And this leads to our ability to create a huge item pool where all the items are aligned and ready to go for computer adaptive administrations. So let me go a bit deeper into this because I know many people are interested in how do we actually do this. So here I'm just mentioning the Common European Framework. Some of you might be familiar with it, which goes from a basic ability to speak English to a proficient level C2, which is the mastery level. And what we have here are examples of words, but also texts that match these different levels. And this alignment is done initially by humans. So then what we do is to put all of these annotations by humans onto the Duolingo scale. And then we generate multiple items in each of these levels. And after that, they are reviewed for fairness and bias. So there is a link between a mapping between the CEFR scale and our Duolingo scale, as you can see on the left. So now I want to give you a second example, which is about quality assurance. So if we have a test that is so finely tuned that it's administered every moment of the day or night, the test is taken somewhere in someone's home. So for such an intensive activity, one needs very detailed automatic quality assurance tools, not very different from those that are being used by, say, credit card companies. A credit card is being used every second, anywhere, everywhere in the world. So you need a system in place to monitor for quality, to monitor that the system is up, to monitor security, to monitor for any strange errors and so on. So it's like a living organism that you need to monitor all the time. So as a high-stake assessment, which, as I mentioned before, is a fine-tuned system, we need to ensure that the expected quality standards at all stages of the test are followed, and we need to provide context and affordances if adjustments need to be made. And we also need to make sure that all these pieces of the test are integrated and monitored by components as well as by the total. And what you see on the last row here, you see all the parts that are components of the validity argument that we monitor and evaluate on a regular basis, very, very often actually. And just to give you a very quick overview here is, we call it Aqua Analytics for quality assurance for assessment. It can be used for any assessment. At the moment, for us, it's used for the Duolingo English test. And the way it works is it imports the data from the database, which can be daily, actually. Calculate the statistics, and here is where a lot of research is still going on, because we want to figure out which are the most relevant statistics that we want to monitor. And then we visualize the metrics with plots and dashboards, so that all this human subject matter expert evaluation is supported, and experts can identify unusual behaviors. Now, we also use automatic alarm systems here, and as well as in some other systems. So we are trying to combine the two. And I believe I mentioned all. So let me give you a bit more example on how this would work. For example, differential item functioning. Differential item functioning is a property of the items. It usually means that conditional on the test taker ability, we have evidence that the item behaves in different ways in two different populations. And usually it's an unexpected way and it's an undesirable way. So we need to identify if any item displays this differential behavior. The way we did the work at Duolingo is slightly different from how it is done in other tests because of the structure of the test for the DET, because we have so much data that there is an interesting sparseness in the data that needs additional computational models and thinking on how to approach it. But at the moment, one way in which we evaluate this is by looking at the logistic regression, and we identify directly flags and directions for the differential item function. And then we visualize this within Aqua, and then we identify those items that display these flags at a higher level, and then we put in place a fairness and bias review with subject matter experts. If an item, and the rest is like in any other test, if the item is biased, then revise or retire the item. If otherwise, you retain the items. In most cases, we have not identified diff items significant diff with significant diff, so we have not been in the situation of retiring items or removing them from scoring, but we want to have that possibility in our processes. What is still work in progress in Aqua, as I mentioned before, this is an MVP. We just, the first time we launched it was in December, but the first time we actually look at analysis was in January. So now we are adding models. And one idea that we have is to look at more sophisticated regression models, like a non-parametric regression model, generalized boosted regression models, for example, with the existing data to study how the background characteristics relate to various scores. We also want to look at models to generate predicted scores for test takers on an ongoing basis, and then monitor the residuals that could help us identify perhaps inappropriate behavior. And we'll take into account as much of the demographic information we have about the students so that we can create these systems, predictive systems at scale. So to conclude, the Duolingo English test is quite a different test. It uses machine learning algorithm for each part of the test development process, from item development to tagging to scoring. And it uses a psychometric framework to meet the standards. It's also a very rigorous test. It's reliable, and you can find information about all of these statements on our website. There is a technical manual that you can review. It's reliable, valid, secure, efficient, accessible, comparable with other tests, and very affordable. And the reason why it's affordable is that we take advantage of the technology in order to serve the test takers better and provide a flexible offering. It also illustrates perfectly the blend of artificial intelligence and psychometrics, as in computational psychometrics. And with this, I would like to conclude my presentation, to ask you to please send me the questions by email if you have any, and also to thank Jitao for inviting me to this seminar. Thank you so much and enjoy the event. I will stop sharing now, and then I will stop recording.